Hi, I'm Sherry from Whole Circle Studio, and welcome to our second Around the World Block of the Month destination, London. Today I'm going to share my tips with you as you're making your Tower Bridge block. Spanning the Thames River in London, Tower Bridge lifts based on the requests it receives from vessels. During the pandemic, there isn't as much of a demand for the bridge to lift, but during regular times, Tower Bridge can lift as much as 800 times a year. In addition to this video, be sure to refer to the tips included in the pattern, as well as other links below for the foundation paper piecing tutorial, as well as previous month's videos. Much of the content in this video is applicable to all the Around the World blocks. Let's get started. I'm using these beautiful grunge fabrics by Moda to make my Tower Bridge block today. When I'm pre-cutting my fabric, I use the paper scraps left over from cutting out my paper templates to label my fabric pieces according to the cutting table in the pattern. Here's what some of my labeled pieces look like. I like keeping cut fabric pieces in this butcher tray. I'll give the link to that below. For this block, pay special attention to your fabric swatch chart when cutting out your fabric pieces. There are a good number of sections and fabric pieces needed for this block, and for this reason, it could be easy to make a mistake when reaching for your intended fabric. Remember that the sections shaded in light gray is for the bridge, and the unshaded sections are for the main background behind the bridge. If you use a light color for your bridge and a dark fabric for your background, like I am here, your main brain may switch this, so just be mindful as you're reaching for your fabric. If you're piecing the letters, remember that the background portion of the tag is the fabric labeled left side of the block and is shaded in dark gray. The phrase left side of the block refers to the orientation when we're looking at the final block from the front. Remember, we're working in reverse right now, or looking at the back of the block. The background behind the letters is a different fabric than the main background of the block behind the bridge. This is another area you'll want to be mindful of when sewing and reaching for your fabric. Be careful when you're paper piecing section F. Paper piecing skinny areas, like here in the trusses, is just like paper piecing any other area, but it may take a little bit more of your attention. I'll admit I had to use my seam ripper on this paper piece. Before you add on a piece, make sure you're sewing on the correct line. I found that it's easy to skip ahead. One tip is to make sure you've sewn on the line closest to the lower number first. So here it would be this line before this line. And of course, make sure you have the right fabric. Again, the unshaded area is the background of the block and the shaded area is the bridge. Once you have your pieces filled with fabric, join them like you did the previous block. There are a couple of areas I wanted to point out when joining your pieces. Pay close attention to pieces that should be aligned at seams. An example of this is when joining piece B to piece C. Like we did with the Cairo block, I use positioning pinning to align these seams. Let me go ahead and show you again how I like to do this. First, I'll put the pieces right sides together, and then I'll use my thin, super thin pins, one that isn't bent like that one, because I ran over it with the sewing machine. I'll then position the pin on the line and right through the seam, and sometimes I'll not get it right the first time. I'll turn it over and make sure it's right on the seam. And I know it's in 1/4 of an inch from the seam allowance because it's on that line. And then I'll take my pin, and this part takes a couple of tries. I'll position it right again on that seam. Make sure it comes up on the line. I need to move it down a little bit. There we go, the third time's a charm. So that way I know that those two seams will be locked in. Again, I'll make sure my pin is nice and straight. I don't want it bending to the left or to the right because then my seams won't be well aligned. So once it's nice and straight, I'll then take 2 more pins and I'll secure the 2 pieces together on either side of that positioning pin. I like to use a pin on either side because I find that it locks it in really well. I like my ends to be nice and even, so I'll also use the positioning pinning on the corners. So I'll place my pin right in at the corner. Sometimes, depending on the color fabric, I can see where that corner is through the fabric. Other times it may take me a couple of tries. Again, I'll lock that in. For the ends or the corners, I'll typically just use one pin to secure the two pieces together. Make sure you take these positioning pins out. Your sewing machine will thank you. I'll do the other corner. Again, I'm looking for it to come up right on the corner. Do it one more try, close. And again, the ends probably can be pretty close. Again, if you're looking for super accuracy. Make sure that's nice and straight. Secure, take the pin out, and then I can sew along that line. To help keep the bases of the bridge centered with the towers, there are dots to help you align the paper pieces. Let me show you. Look for these dots at the bottom of the main center bridge piece and also the top of paper piece J/K. There's also a note about this in the pattern. Like we did with the Cairo block, use the positioning pinning technique through the dots to achieve symmetry. I can't wait to see your bridges come together. Because it's something you may want to refer to again, I made a special video tutorial on my tips for piecing tiny sections like those found in the top of the tag. You can find the link to this video below. Thanks again for being here and for sewing along with us. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Also, be sure to share your progress on Instagram using the Around the World hashtags found in the pattern. We definitely want to check out your progress. See you next month and happy sewing!